Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ken Kirschenbaum. Today is March 27th, 2025. Thank you for attending our final webinar in the 2025 K&K webinar series. Today we have the dynamic Dynamark Central Station. Trey Alter is the president and CEO of Dynamark, and he's going to be doing the presentation today. Send in your questions using the write-in, and I will read them to Trey at the end, unless a question requires some kind of immediate attention by Trey. So I hope you enjoy the webinar. All the webinars are recorded, and they are available on podcast as well, and they should be up on the website probably by later today or tomorrow. And Trey, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Ken. I want to thank all of you for taking a moment out of either your morning or your afternoon based on where you're tuning in from. Let's see if I can move this out of the way. I want to take a little bit different tack today. Well, first, I want to thank Kathleen, who really helped me get to start, and Ken for hosting these. Thank you very much for running this webinar series. I am going to take a little bit of a different approach today, I think, than some of the other webinars. And rather than just sort of drone on about why I think Dynamark's great, I obviously think it's great. I come into work here every day. I want to talk more about the evolving nature of our industry and how it's impacting monitoring centers, and how I think that's ultimately going to impact you and the customer. So I'll talk a little bit about Dynamark as it relates to how we're addressing and solving some of those challenges, but a little bit maybe different flavor today than you were probably expecting. There we go. Dynamark Monitoring, we protect America. That's our slogan. A little bit about us. We were founded in 2009. We're a privately held company. We're not PE backed. We like to think we have a culture of innovation and curiosity. And I think one thing that is very different about us is that we like to find new solutions to challenges. We like change. We don't just like it for change's sake, but we believe there's always a better answer to a current problem. So we're curious people. We operate 2 monitoring centers, 365, 24/7. I'll talk about that a little bit more here in a few slides. We handled 94% of our alarms in under 30 seconds last year. Those that know me know I'm not really a big fan of average response time. Not that I believe our competitors are misleading you or in any way. I just don't think it's a very good metric that measures what it is that we do. We're in a business where we're measured by our worst response. So we need to make sure that our responses are good day in and day out in very high numbers. And last year we handled over 1 million high priority events. I went back and pulled these figures just a few days ago. I was a little shocked at how many that was. It's kind of hard to We're UL listed, FM approved. We are TMA 5 Diamond, so we've got all the great certifications, and we've been at this for a while. I like to think that we've really honed our craft. So where has our industry gone? My father started in the alarm business in 1975, so this would be the 50th year that my family has been in some way involved in the alarm business. And I think it's taken us 50 years to go from the back of the train to the front of the train. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you're in the back of the train, all you can really see from the caboose is where you've been. But if you're the conductor and you're sitting up front, you have this opportunity to look down the road. You can look down the tracks and say, where are we going? And if we think about the evolution, I really believe it's kind of broken down into, we could debate what the phases look like, but I think it's broken down into 5 phases. We have the reactive phase, which to some degree we're still in. We've built hardware, we've built products that do things once something's happened. I think my earliest memory of the alarm space was going to my grandparents' house, and my dad had installed, I don't remember what the model name was, it was a big brown box, and it was the first alarm system that had a tape dialer on it. I think it was like a round tape dialer, and it could play a message across the phone line. I think the Bell companies had broken up and they took advantage of that outbound dial capability. He was just so excited about it, and my grandparents were proud of him. I'll admit I didn't really understand what was going on, but it was revolutionary at the time. But if we step back and look at it, it was actually pretty rudimentary. Somebody breaks into the house and then something takes place. Those were the early days of the alarm space. And along the way, it began to professionalize a little bit. So in the early days, people were making this equipment. maybe in the garage, they were distributing it to friends. But we saw the beginning of specialization. Distributors began to emerge and they distributed product. Manufacturers emerged and they manufactured product. And alarm dealers largely sold and saw and maybe even monitored that product. So as people got specialized in their particular crafts, they got really, really good. They got really efficient. And I think that's a big part of the reason why the industry began to grow and become more profitable, and become a real commercial industry. And I think we largely have stayed there until we got to the interactive phase. And the interactive phase, I believe, is marked by probably Vivint would be the most visible example. And no matter how you may feel about Vivint, they changed the paradigm pretty profoundly. Now, they showed people what was possible with an alarm system. Rather than just wait for a siren to go off, you could interact. You could see what was going on from your phone. You could do things with the alarm system. And it changed everything about the way our industry works. People went from just thinking they needed an alarm system to maybe actually wanting one. It became the baseline for much of what it is that we do today. And I think it's probably solely responsible for the dramatic increase in the penetration rates that we've seen in the growth in our industry since the early mid-2000s. We are now in phase 4. And phase 4, I think, is another profound shift in the way we do business. And we are in the proactive phase of the security industry, or the preventative phase. There's a real focus now on deterring and preventing crime rather than documenting it. And that seems so obvious, but it's just now that the industry is catching up to harnessing the technology that we have, sort of a systematic way to change outcomes. And I believe this is going to be the most profound shift that we've had in this industry in the last 50 years. And it will begin to bleed into what is coming, the next phase, which is the era of interconnectivity. We are already, and we will continue to be able to bring in data from multiple sources, synthesize that data to change the way we respond to alarms and to get better outcomes. So, I mean, if you think about it, we've come a long way in a short period of time. 50 years in terms of an industry really isn't all that long. But these last 3 phases have probably happened in the last 15 years. So what that really signifies to me is that the pace of change is picking up, and it's picking up. So how has that changed the monitoring world, and how is that going to impact you? Well, first, I believe that size really matters now when it comes to monitoring. The larger stations are just running away from the field. And no matter how you feel about that, I think that's objectively true. They have more scale. They can leverage more accounts across their existing base, and they're far more efficient, far more effective than a lot of the smaller stations. And they can deploy the technology really quickly and across a massive base, which means if they're making investments, they can get a return on those investments. Largely, they have a higher level of operating sophistication. I don't say that to denigrate our smaller partners or smaller, competitors, but these larger stations have teams that are dedicated to very specific areas within the business. Kind of like we talked about in the last slide with phase 2. You know, you've got people that are working on just modeling and forecasting. They just recruit people. They're just training people. It allows them to specialize and be experts in a specific area of the business, which honestly does generally lead to sort of better outcomes in those areas. They have better pricing power. And that's important because it's not just that they can be more profitable, but they can use those increased margins to reinvest in the business to continue to pull away from the field. They'll have even more technology, even more talent. They will continue to reinvest, and they will reap the rewards of that. And finally, they generally have deeper talent pools. I mean, they've got software developers on staff, database support, technical support, network engineers. I could go on, and you're thinking, well, I just want the alarm answered fast, and I want it to be a good experience. Why should I care about all that stuff? Well, there's a lot of things that have to go perfectly for your customer to have a really great experience. We've got to get the alarm. It's got to be processed. We have to have people in the seats. They have to be well trained. Our cybersecurity has to be great. We have to know how many people staff. There's a lot of things that happen to make sure that one unique experience is just the way that you want it. And a lot of the smaller stations, they have great people, but they wear many hats. So they become jack of all trades, master of none. And what we're really starting to see is that the bigger are getting bigger, and the smaller are having a hard time surviving. I also don't believe it will be much longer that redundancy will be optional. UL Canada now requires redundant stations. You would surmise that it will not take that long for that regulation to sort of drift south and it become the norm here as well. We already have things sort of pointing in that direction, like new factors. Pretty soon, I don't know that there will be a UL listed non-redundant station. We're also seeing early signs that banks and insurance companies are starting to look at the underlying assets and collateral and ask more questions about, how is this collateral monitored? Do you have a disaster plan? If you don't, what is the plan? We operate 2 facilities. As I mentioned, we have one about an hour west of Washington, D.C. in Maryland, which is where our corporate headquarters is. It's where I'm at today. We have one in the greater Los Angeles area in Corona, California. So they're both operating 24/7, 365. The next alarm that comes in could go to either one of these locations. I've got this graphic. We've used this a couple of times over the years. Data is becoming increasingly more like currency, and more data is more power. And I think for a lot of folks, this makes them uncomfortable. It's a little bit scary, but you can't put Pandora back in the box. And I think it brings some obvious advantages to the dealer to sort of help you grow your business. I'll just give some obvious examples and then maybe some that are a little bit more in development. One is data entry. We do a lot of data entry in this industry. We've got people typing data into one platform, maybe Workhorse, then into Dynamark, and then to another location. It's an incredible waste of time, and also you end up with inaccuracies. We've been integrated with Alarm.com, DMP, Workhorse, probably the CRM you're using, and a bunch of other data sources to make sure that we're synchronizing data. Right? There's normally one ideal source of truth. And we can grab that data, sync it between multiple locations to make sure the data is accurate in every single location. A really simple example is you have a technician, they go out, they add a zone to an account, they forget to bring it back to the office, put the paperwork in. Well, if you're doing that with Alarm.com or DMP, no problem, that's going to work here. If you're using Workhorse, no problem, they're going to grab that data, they're going to populate the zone list, and everything's going to be accurate, you don't have to touch it. But I think there's maybe some not so obvious examples. And I believe the era of the report is dead. If you're a dealer and you're on this call, I would imagine you get a report every morning or somebody in your office of all your late to test, all your troubles, all this, all that. And if you're at a certain size, that data is starting to overwhelm because it's static and it comes in at a certain time. You still need to take it, maybe off a PDF. You need to go do something with it. The wave of the future is just-in-time data. Just like you call up ADI today, you order a panel right before you need it. You're going to do the same thing with your data. I'll give you another obvious example. If you've got a customer that's maybe 60 days past due and their system is late to test, you've got a cancellation risk there. But there's also opportunity. If we get a late to test and maybe they don't have a pay history problem, instead of putting it on a report, we can send that to your CRM, which can generate an automatic service ticket. We can receive a confirmation from you and generate an outbound service call to your customers so that you can go out and fix the condition before it becomes an attrition problem or a loss. You look better as the dealer being proactive, and you can make more money. You can go generate service revenue. So, we talk about data, just-in-time data is the wave of the future, taking that data and acting upon it. And I believe central stations are uniquely positioned to be a clearinghouse for a lot of different aggregated data sources. Which leads me to software. Software runs the world. I wrote a business plan in 2008 before we started Dynamark, and I made 3 hypotheses. And one of those was that hardware dominated the industry, but that software was going to rule. And I'm rarely right, but I was right on this account. And I'll give the example of Honeywell. Honeywell, Ademco at that time, really had the industry, they had it locked up. They made great hardware. They still make great hardware. But there was this upstart called Alarm.com that was starting to do things a little bit different. They had a different vision for the future. The benefit of hindsight, we know their software approach really catapulted them to stardom. They took market share from Honeywell. Software runs the world, and it runs the monitoring centers. Largely, this is how you as a dealer and your team interact with us every day. So when we talk about service, we talk about software, are they really different? And I would argue no. It's all a part of what it is that we're offering. We have to give you great tools so that your team can do what they need to do in real time, with accurate data, day in, day out, in the office or on the road. And I think a lot of monitoring centers have understood this, and at least some of the bigger ones have invested heavily. I know we have. And I also would tell you that it's a reflection into who you're working with. If they're making investments in the places that you can see that are going to help your team, they're probably making investments in the areas that you cannot see. Maybe in their team, maybe in their hiring, maybe in their training, maybe in the infrastructure. So if you're working with a monitoring center that fundamentally hasn't shown you anything new online in the last 15 years, you probably need to ask some questions about, where are you investing? Because it doesn't, if you're not investing on the web, where are the investments going? So I think software is absolutely going to drive everything that we do in the future. That doesn't mean that people go away. It just means it becomes a force multiplier. I'm going to talk about communication a little bit because I would say in the last 3 years, this is where I see the most friction in the industry. If you're an alarm dealer, you fall on the spectrum somewhere. You're either sort of at the tail end of your career, and you probably have, you built a good book of business, or you're a little bit earlier in your career, and you're thinking, how do I stand out in the marketplace? Based on your age, you have very different ideas about how to communicate with customers. And what I hear all the time is, my customers want this, my customers are different. That can be true, but it is largely not. Customers tend to be customers all over the United States. And we know that about not quite 80% of phone calls go unanswered now. So if we're making tons and tons and tons of phone calls and the customers are not answering them, that's them telling us, hey, I don't want to communicate with you this way. I want to communicate another way. So I show Instant Connect here. It's an alarm chat platform that we've developed to handle alarms. Basically, I think you have probably all seen one of these at a lot of monitoring centers. They've become pretty prolific. We pioneered this, I think, over 5 years ago. It's the most successful thing we've ever done. Over 60% of users engage with it, and almost 43% of alarms are canceled or verified through this SMS and web-based technology. And I don't highlight it so much to show you what it is that we're doing, because we've had this for a while, but it's maybe just to pique your curiosity. How do your customers want you to communicate? It's a question you need to ask yourself, because if you are not communicating with them effectively, it's going to impact your ability to do business with the customers. If they want to be on WhatsApp, you got to be on WhatsApp. If they want to be an SMS, you got to be an SMS. If you're making tons of phone calls and they're not answering the phone, I'm telling you that's not the way they want to communicate. So I think it's not an either or. I think it's an all of the above. It's based on the circumstance. But this is an area that our industry is wrestling with mightily these days. So I just encourage you to give it some thought. I'm going to touch on ASAP to PSAP 3.0. ASAP to PSAP has been around, I believe, for the better part of 15 years. But I also think it's at an inflection point. We've been using it for a long time, and in the areas that we can use it, it works really, really well. The stumbling block has been getting the ECCs or PSAPs to adopt it, because it requires integration to their CAD systems. I guess what's different now since 2020, the 911 system in America is just an absolute crisis. We do this every day, so we see it, but 75% of these ECCs can't hire the people they need. 82% of them can't even fill the vacancies they have. And if you want to see the most outdated technology you could possibly imagine, jump in the car after this call and drive down to your local 911 center. They could be the exception to the rule, but I would wager that they're likely not. They can barely manage their tech stack to keep the systems functioning. So, we have to have a 911 system in America, and a lot of these events are really real. So what do? Well, I will credit TMA with showing real leadership here. They gathered up about 24 of us. Dynamark and about, say 24 of our peers made a significant investment to accelerate the development of ASAP to PSAP 3.0. It'll be a web-based protocol that just about any PSAP in America can hook into. And we'll be able to push video and health data and just sort of non-traditional data through this pipe right to 911. And what it is it's a lot faster and it's a lot more accurate. Places that we're using this is just incredible. This is going to really, really help not just our first responders. It's going to help us get responses out there faster. We don't talk about it, but I'd say dozens of times a day we call 911 centers, and after 10 minutes they have things. That's a huge, huge problem. And ASAP to PSAP 3.0, I think, is a really good solution. So video. I'm sure everybody's talked to you about video. It's probably been on every presentation. They talk about it. Video is the wave of the future. I would argue that it's not the wave of the future. It's the current. It's the right now. There's tremendous leaps and strides happening with video in the modern age. I know most of you probably laid awake at night thinking, what does a dispatcher at Dynamark look like? Well, I've got a picture of one here. I'm kidding, of course. That's obviously Ray Charles, but think about it for a second. I mean, if you sit back and think about what they have to deal with, they're getting a piece of data from an alarm system that gives them very limited information. Zone 1, front door is open. The alarm is sounding. Okay, so what are they going to do? They're going to call contact 1. They're going to call contact 2. They're going to call contact 3. And if they get a hold of any of those people, they're going to say, hey, what's going on? And unless they're actually in the space at the time, they say, we don't know. So we say, okay, well, if nobody knows what's going on, let's just send the police. I mean, what if there was a better way? Well, there obviously is, and it's video. And it's not the wave of the future. We can do this right now. We do it all day long. I'm going to show a video here. Hopefully the sound will go through. Skip ahead here a little bit.
Verify security threats. Share the details with this.
This is a live event that happened at Dynamark.
This is Dynamark monitoring. There's a possible burglary in progress at the Martin Towers complex, 9415 Southeast Scanner Drive. I have video verification of a break-in at the front door. 3 masked suspects, 1 is armed. 2 are wearing orange reflective.
And this is a live feed you're looking at, correct?
Yes, they are currently outside the front entrance. They have a black pickup truck with black.
And you're with Dynamark monitoring?
Yes.
After Dynamark verified the threat, dispatch to escalate.
So I think there's a lot going on here. So this was not a two-way talk-down scenario. We didn't have that opportunity to be able to deter this. But if we think about what's going on here, we changed the outcomes. So these don't look like bad guys necessarily. It would be hard to tell. We would have no way to know without seeing video that this suspect had a gun. We would have gotten a glass break. We would have sent the police. Probably would have taken 25 minutes to get there. They could have potentially walked into a very, very bad situation. A life could have been lost. Many lives could have been lost. But instead, we can look. We can actually see what's going on. We know what the suspects look like. We know they're armed. We can pass along that information. And they can use that information to respond quicker and to do it safely. This resulted in apprehension. And I could show a lot of videos like this, but I'm watching right before my eyes, day in and day out, the old way and the new way. And I don't want to denigrate what it is that we do, but one way is dumb and one way is smart. Not that what we're doing is dumb. It's that the systems just don't do that much. I still think there's a place for alarm systems. Together right now, they're a really good complement to video. They work together like peanut butter and jelly. But video is just far superior to anything you could ever install on site. So, why listen when you can look? I think it's important. So what's changed in video to make it the now? Well, I think a lot, especially in the last year. Vendors are starting to rush in to offer sort of out-of-the-box solutions that you can systematize and you can replicate and sell. If we think about why the monitoring world sort of exploded, it's because we sold defined hardware, defined peripherals, we spoke a common language, contact ID or SIA. We built standards. And we all got used to those standards and we could replicate them and we brought costs down. And I'm seeing the same thing with video. The analytics are good, fewer false alarms, which is reducing the cost to monitor. I think we're going to see prices to video monitor go down, 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 down. The two-way talk is improving. It needs to get better, but it's improving. And we're looking at a 10x revenue opportunity. There are a lot of alarm dealers out there and there are only so many homes and businesses. And I hear from dealers all the time, I'm trying to find ways to get new business. The business is out there. You might just be looking in the wrong place. I would concede not everybody's going to spend $500 a month for video monitoring. But I think there's an awful lot of people that will spend more than $35 a month if you can add value. And this adds value. Ken and I were talking prior to jumping on here. In my neighborhood, it's a nice neighborhood, but the cars get broken into, like every neighborhood in America. They don't break into mine. Because if you walk on my property after 11 o'clock at night, we're going to talk you down. And it's happened many times over the years. And now they break into cars in the neighborhood and they just don't even come on my property. So this is available. It's available today. We've seen a really large explosion in it. So we've got probably a few dozen dealers really making a lot of hay with this. If you're not doing video, you've got to really ask yourself, what do I need to do to bridge the gap? So sort of my last slide before we jump into questions is to talk about what has changed and what has not changed. I mean, I've probably scared you in some ways, but I don't want to sort of overdo it either. There's no question in my mind that technology adoption is going to drive future success. No doubt in my mind about that at all. And you're either going to choose to adopt that technology and embrace it and succeed, or you're going to resist it, and I think you're going to face some pretty severe headwinds. And I also really believe video monitoring will dominate the new sales and revenue over the next 15, however many years in this space. So if you want to make more money than you're making today, that's how you got to do it. But in some ways, things never change. You don't just have to work with a large data center that never answers the phone. I'm not proposing that's where we're going. Great service will always stand out. If you think about big box retailers, you can go to Family Dollar, you could go to Walmart, you could go to Target, you could go to Nordstrom. There's somewhere for everybody based on what it is that you want. I also believe people and relationships are irreplaceable. Having the ability to pick up the phone and call someone who will solve a problem for you right now, that's important. That will always be important. And I think we aim to always maintain that here at Dynamark. And last, hard work never goes out of style. One of our real claims to fame is that we're really aggressive and dedicated bunch to our craft. We want to be better next year than we are this year. So always trying to move the needle a little bit. And I think our dealers benefit from that because we're trying to get a little bit better. We want to give you a little more for that dollar next year than we gave you this year. We want to roll out new services. We want to be faster. We want to be better. And I don't think that's just us. I think there's really great monitoring centers in this space. If you're with one that is doing that, that's great. If you're with one that maybe isn't exhibiting that behavior, I'd be asking some questions. I'll close by saying I've never been as optimistic about the alarm space or the life safety space as I am right now. We've faced a lot of sort of existential competitive outside threats, and we've addressed, in my opinion, all of them head on, and we've largely come out victorious. Food, clothing, and shelter are critical factors to survival, but they're not the most basic thing we need. They're worthless without safety. It's our most basic desire as human beings. We want to feel safe. We want to be safe. We want to buy that safety from people we know, care about, and we trust. And that's you. If you're an alarm dealer living in the community, shopping at the same grocery store, you're providing safety to your neighbors, there's always going to be a place for you in this industry. So we love independent alarm dealers. That's why we work so hard at this. We want to see the industry continue to support independent entrepreneurs. It's really the backbone of our business. And I think sometimes I'm crazy for being in a 24/7 business, but there's something about it that I just love. The technology, working with the people, catching bad guys. It's a great way to make a living. I think we're all really fortunate that we get to participate in this space. And on the hard days, I come back and I remind myself, hey, we get to make a difference for this dollar. So I'll leave it right there. And Ken, with that, I will allow you to pepper me with any questions you like. I'd be thrilled to answer any, if I can.
Well, I want to thank Trey for a great presentation. It's refreshing to have somebody who loves their job and their work, and you see it in the way Dynamark operates and the way he did his presentation. So I want to thank you. And here's some questions that came in. Will your new location in California be operating around the clock, or will it only be open 9 to 5?
No, it operates around the clock, and it's going to continue to operate around the clog that. So we purchased TriStar Monitoring. I'd known Tim LeBlanc and those folks for a long time. I think I called him twice a year, every year for a long time, and finally he said, okay, I think it's time to partner up. What we loved about the place, I went out to visit it, and it was so much nicer than I expected. So yeah, they had a bunch of accounts, and they had a good business, and they brought revenue to the table. But when I came back, I said, this monitoring center is terrific. They've got great people, great technology. They were a good fit for us, so it's going to be 24/7, 365. California probably would have been my 50th choice, quite honestly, and where I wanted to locate a central station. The fact that we're willing to make it work there, I think, says a lot about the people that we employ out there.
Well,
And
a lot of
they're
those
tremendous about it, great dealers too.
Trey, I can't let that go. I mean, DC's really not that far from California, I must say.
It really isn't. You're 100% right. You must be gluttons for punishment.
Here's another question. Will all of your calls be handled only in Maryland?
No, so it works kind of round robin now. We work on a longest idle. So the next alarm that comes in is going to go to whoever's been idle the longest. The art of running a monitoring station is to always have one person doing nothing. It's hard to do. So they're coming in right now. It could be going to California, it could be going here, it can go anywhere. We do have the ability to route calls or specific type of calls to groups, but for the most part, it's going whoever's free next.
Okay, great. Do you follow TMA AVS-01? If not, do you plan to implement it? I'm not sure what that is. Can you tell us what TMA?
Yeah, they actually just did a webinar yesterday that was recorded that I plan to watch. It's basically alarm scoring. So we talk about predictive analytics. You could ask the dispatchers in there that work the night shift. They know the alarms that false alarm. Even when you have hundreds of thousands of accounts, you have some people who are just irresponsible with alarm systems. And finding them doesn't necessarily solve the problem. So what they're trying to do is develop these standards to say, how likely is this to be a real alarm? AVS-01's gone a long way. I think you're going to see monitoring centers who have a lot of capability start to build some of their own internal scoring models and utilizing this with some of the AI we're starting to do as well. So we're at the very front end of that.
It's actually pushing them.
Yeah, I'll say one more thing. It's not about what we want to do. It's not even about what TMA wants to do. It's about what the dealers will allow us to do as well.
Well, the only thing that comes to mind about this issue is I'm very concerned when customers and users push towards trying to tell the dealer, which is a way of telling the central station, how they want signals communicated, how many, and I consistently tell dealers, I don't know how you feel about this, I consistently tell dealers, look, central stations have their procedures. We don't want to tell operators to deviate from those procedures. It's just a recipe for causing a mistake to be made. Now, I don't know, a lot of central stations will say, oh, no, we customize, we'll adapt to whatever the dealer wants, whatever the end user wants. I don't know how good an idea that is. I don't think it's a good idea. What do you think about that?
Well, I think there's a right way to do it and a wrong way. So we believe in the power of programming. So if you tell us that you're going to put an apple in the central station, but you need it to look like an orange, we want to make it look like an orange on the very first day. So if you need us to translate something and convert it, we'll do that, but we have to do it on the upfront. We will not do that with notes. We will not allow the dispatchers to read a page of notes or make subjective decisions. Our dispatchers are trained to ruthlessly follow the procedures that are programmed on the account. And you can program one account to do something special. But it sounds silly, but we use this example all the time when training new dispatchers. And what we tell them is if the action pattern tells you to go outside and set Trey's car on fire, go outside and set it on fire.
Well, let me give you another example. I had this just today, because I do these contract negotiations all day long, all week long. So today we had an end user say, well, we don't want to get calls and we don't want to get text messages. no, we don't want text messages and we don't want emails. We just want calls. So my observation to the alarm dealer in responding to what this customer wanted was, well, what happens when nobody picks up the phone? You have to ask the customer, do you want any record of some kind of written communication to go out to you, or you don't, or you just don't? Because the next thing that comes out very often is customer will say, we want you to go through the call list and keep calling until you reach somebody. And my answer to them is, we can't do that. We can't be calling all night long and not getting anyone to pick up. So we're going to go through this list, and but then we're going to dispatch at our discretion. We can't be locked in to making, because that's the kind of thing that comes back with a lawsuit. You're right. You didn't reach anybody. Well, we called went through the list 4 times. Our contract says we're only going to go through it once, but the operator took the time to go through it twice or 3 times or whatever they did, and they couldn't reach anybody. And it looked to us like a false alarm, or it looked to us like an alarm, and we dispatched. It's not our fault that the police didn't get there for a half hour, and the owner goes, I would have been there in 5 minutes. I live down the block. You know, and we got robbed. It was a real incident, and we got robbed, and now I'm going to sue you. So we have to try and avoid those types of situations. Another issue that's coming up, and it leads into this next question, which I'll ask after I ask my question, is have you seen any change in frequency of signals coming in with the advent of AI cameras screening out these false alarms? I think that AI cameras, they're here, they're out there, but I think that's still an emerging technology. So I'm not sure how good it is, how safe it is, or how reliable it is. Maybe you can comment on that.
Yeah, so I would say there's really two ways to do analytics. They call them sort of edge or cloud. In the early days of the space, manufacturers would put their flavor of analytics on the hardware. It largely didn't get any smarter. It wasn't great. What we're seeing now is the space is dominated by cloud analytics. So you can put almost any camera you want in the field, and we will run all of those images and alarms through the cloud to screen them, and it basically builds a profile of what that site looks like. Tremendous processing power these analytics providers like Calypso and Actuator providing. And they can tell really, really minute differences and non-differences based on millions of historical images and thousands of historical images of your particular camera view. And they've changed the game. They've absolutely cut down on the number of false alarms that we'll get on cameras, which is letting us lower costs to the dealer. And I think what you'll see is if you're paying $10 a camera for analytics now, I know they'll kill me for saying this, but I think you're probably going to pay $5 5 years from now. We're seeing absolute all-out arms race for that RMR, and it's going to get better, faster, cheaper, kind of like the principle of Moore's Law.
I'm surprised the next question after that remark isn't, well, when are we going to see the price of central station charges coming down in the same proportion?
Well, you mean on video or sort of holistically?
Well, on the video for starters, because that's what you just said is going to be half price. And when are we going to, you know, I don't think that was a facetious question, because I don't think you're going to see it. Because no matter how technology streamlines and becomes perhaps cheaper to operate and provide, labor costs continue to go up.
Yeah, it's mainly labor. I mean, so let me address sort of both of those. I was a kid in the alarm business. Actually used to work in a monitoring center. So the average alarm dealer was paying $5 for monitoring in 1988. They're probably paying less than that today, not even counting inflation. So as an industry, wholesale monitoring has done an incredible job at helping dealers drive margins. I would expect that's going to happen with video as well. The biggest challenge I see is dealers are having a hard time getting these deployed and making multiple visits to get them dialed in. So we're in the event monitoring business, and whether you know it or not, It's not an all-you-can-eat buffet. So we will tell you that we're going to charge you $5 for something, but that assumes that you're going to behave in an average fashion. If you send us a lot more signals, we're going to come back to you and say, this isn't working for us. We want to make a new arrangement. So I don't think you can treat video like you've treated sort of regular digital monitoring. Most of what we do has built-in sort of like you used to buy cell phone minutes. You know, it's this much plus this many events pooled together. But if you use a lot more events, you will pay for those events.
I think the difference is there's a great similarity because you can't tolerate excessive digital signals either. However, excessive digital signals is a lot different than excessive video signals because video signals take a lot more time to handle.
Here's my general. Yeah. If I had to look into the future and make a guess, my guess is 10 years from now, almost every alarm system will have an IP or cellular communicator. Video will be considered like a peripheral instead of a separate system. And you'll probably pay $8 or $9 sort of all in to monitor an account. You'll charge the customer 80 or 100.
I think to bring down video monitoring costs like that, AI would really have to be reducing the number of signals coming in. Because
we are monitoring some camera systems for under $10 for the whole system now.
Well, what would you say your ratio is? How many alarm accounts can an operator be assigned to handle? In other words, when do you know I have 2 operators on duty? Now I grew to this many accounts. Now I need 3 operators. Now I need 10 operators. Now I need 20 operators. Well, the video side, I don't know whether you separate operators or not, but video is often separated so that, okay, these are video operators and they're handling this many accounts and we need to dedicate this many operators. Listen, you could start, I don't know if you do, if you monitor gate access for communities anywhere, which is also, I think, becoming more popular, replacing on-site guards manning these entrances to communities to straight video with audio video service there, remote access. That takes a dedicated operator. There's people coming and going all day long that need to be cleared. So there's a lot more intensive labor for something like that.
Well, I also think it goes back to sort of what I talked about earlier. It's actually more in the operating sophistication side. So the labor's in some ways the easy part. It's figuring out how much you need. So we do a tremendous amount of forecasting and mathematical modeling here. We've built a lot of our own predictive algorithms to predict, you know, how many alarms are we going to have next Tuesday at 4 o'clock? How many video, how many PERS, because they're all a little different. And really, one of the great art forms of monitoring today in this modern world where we're getting data just killed with it is being able to take it and predict what's going to happen next week and not wait till you have a failure and then respond by trying to catch up with staff. The smaller monitoring centers are understaffed, so they go hire some dispatchers. It takes a while to get them onboarded and trained. By then, some dispatchers have left and they're right back where they started, and they can never get ahead of the curve. Really what needs to happen to monitor this effectively, because we know how long they take, is you got to be planning for next month today. And that takes some sophistication.
Another question is, are you looking at technology that can deter theft, like fog, smoke, to get bad guys out quickly? That's an interesting question, but that's an interesting question being asked to a central station operation. What do you have to do with fog and smoke? Are you going to trigger the fog and smoke, or does the dealer handle that on his end? That fog and smoke's going to go off maybe before the signal goes out, or at the same time the signal goes out. How does that work?
So we have tested this. I think we may even have a video floating around. We were testing these sort of noxious fog canisters, And we went out in our warehouse here. We have a really big warehouse, and a couple of us went out and said, well, let's just see what these are like. Let's make sure they don't kill anyone. And we set them off, and they are remarkably effective. You do not want to be in that room. It scares the ever-living Jesus out of you, and it's really noxious. So we can set them off. I think we're having some discussions with ourselves around what are the protocols for deciding when to set one of these off. I'm sure you're going to end up in one of these lawsuits. And it leads me to the next thing, like gunshot detection. We have done some gunshot detection, but we're remarkably uncomfortable, you know, from a liability standpoint, Ken, because there's almost no amount of money you can pay us that makes us want to take on that liability. Because if you have a single loss, even if we hired you, Ken, that's a tough battle to win when children have been, you know, something bad has happened. So our industry is wrestling with these fog canisters. We can do it. We probably will do it. Gunshot detection at scale, much scarier prospect for us.
I've looked at a bunch of different kinds of products in the past. I think either they're out or they're gone at this point. So I know one I've seen pepper sprays, and my question to clients are, well, how do you keep someone from breaking that glass and just using that pepper spray all over the place when there's no real incident going on? And I also have reservations with fog and smoke. First of all, in the false alarm situation, you have fog and smoke being triggered, and the end user is going to complain because there's going to be residue, no matter what they tell you. I can't believe there isn't residue that's going to be there. And number two, the end user itself, him or herself, could be injured if in a room like that. Okay, so there's your potential. That's in a false alarm situation. In a real alarm situation, you do run the risk, believe it or not, of incurring liability to a trespasser who's on your property. To bring it to the argument to something you can easily understand, you can't have machine guns come out and mow down anyone in the room that your operator thinks shouldn't be there. Okay,
that's an awful shame, because that would be great.
Yeah, that maybe. Well, I'm surprised to hear. Okay, but anyway, yes, but that you can't do it, and you understand you can't do it. That's overkill, so to speak. The response. Okay, so the next thing is, I mean, there's a lot of good examples like that. Could you have bars come down through all ways out, all windows and all doors, and all walls, and now someone's stuck there, and you leave them there for 2-3 weeks with no food or water, and see how they like that. You know, maybe that'll deter them from coming back. You know,
so we have a client that is sort of looking at this fog solution right now, and I think it's a very, very unique subset. So what we've got is we've got a national client that's getting robbed all the time. I mean, they have high value stuff that is easily fensible. They've done everything from an electronic security standpoint. You can do video everywhere. They're employing a lot of sort of physical security measures, and they're still getting broken into. So I think they're discussing with their legal team, because it's a big company, is the risk worth the reward? And honestly, I think they're probably going to do it. They're so tired of the property loss, the damage, that they'd probably be fine losing a couple of lawsuits. They'd save money. And so I think they're probably going to end up deploying it.
Well, I'd hate, you know, maybe I shouldn't say this, since I represent the alarm industry, and this is a webinar that who knows who's going to listen to it, but maybe they ought to go back to the old-fashioned way of sticking a Rottweiler or two in there overnight. That'll solve their problem pretty quick.
I mean, some of these thefts are just brazen.
Yeah, okay. That looks like it's the last question. And unless anyone has something else they want Trey to address, we're going to be thanking him and thanking you for attending this webinar. And we hope to see some of you for all of you at the ISC show. Trey won't be there, but Dynamark is going to be there, roaming around and taking people out to lunch and dinner. Haven't offered to take me out to lunch and dinner, but that's okay. I'm a little.
We'd be more than happy to.
But we'll see him at another show, I hope. And anyway, so I want to thank you all, and the webinar will be up on our website if you want to listen to it again or refer somebody to it, and it's also on podcast. I guess under Kirschenbaum and Kirschenbaum. I'm not even sure how that works, to be honest with you. But that's it. So Trey, thank you so much, and I'll give you the final word to say goodbye, and then we're out of here.
Thank everybody for what you do. This can be a tough way to make a living, and what you guys do out there really makes a difference in communities. And I'm proud of what we do, and thank you.
Trey, every way is a tough way to make a living.
It seems that way. I don't know. I'm going to stumble into an easy way to make a living one of these days.
Yeah, well, okay. The grass is always greener on the other side. Okay?
That's true.
Take care, everybody, and I hope you're all grazing in green pastures. Bye-bye.
Bye. Take care.